Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, I'll be covering the latest news and updates on the Bakhmut front. So I'm back after a 2 days off, and we see a lot of changes here on the front line for the past 2 days. First of all, the Ukrainian attacks on the flanks have increased as they continue their attacks now at the E40 highway, as well as here south of Foothold, where they've managed to fully recapture the village, so they have pushed the Russian forces out. They're also fighting here in the western flanks and to the north of Khomove as they attempt to break through the Russian positions. However, the Russian forces are holding on to their current positions. As well as in the southern flank, there's been no territorial changes here as Russian forces are able to hold on. So they've actually started holding their positions rather than falling back. Then as for the city itself, the Russian forces continue pushing here, and they've gained some significant advances within the citadel area and to the northwest of the city. So by the citadel area, we see that the Russian forces have managed to capture some parts of the high-rise buildings here to the east, where they've gained a foothold next to the hairdresser. So here in the southern part, in this long-range high-rise building, they have gained some positions. And then in the northern parts, they have managed to capture multiple high-rise buildings, as well as the center here, and some of these other buildings here by the center of the northern part. So the Russian forces are here trying to capture the eastern part of the citadel area, as we can see by them pushing here in the southern parts, as well as by the northern parts. As for the northwestern part of the city, the Russian forces continue pushing in this direction. After capturing the Olympic School, they are now pushing here in this northwestern part, and the heaviest fighting is happening all over the last defensive line by Ukrainian forces here in the northwest. So with this, the Russian forces are trying to push through the last defensive line in the northwest, where they will try to cut off the Ukrainian supplies going in and out of the citadel area here to the northwest, as well as the connection to Khomove. As for the southern parts, the Russian forces continue their attacks and are trying to gain full control over the southwestern parts. However, there's been no reports of territorial changes in this area. So the current situation is that the Ukrainian forces continue their attacks in the flanks. However, due to how much territory needs to be covered and the limited success so far, it seems that the Russian forces continue their attacks and focus in the central areas and try to stabilize the flanks. If the Russian forces manage to stabilize the flanks, then they will most likely capture Bakhmut before the Ukrainians do anything. And if the Ukrainians continue their advances, then they'll be able to maybe put a stop on the full capture of Bakhmut. So this is a race against time. Will the Ukrainians receive success first, or will the Russians? So heaviest fighting is happening within the city. However, the Ukrainian forces are concentrating their forces here in the northern side especially, slightly in the southern side. However, it seems that their main thrust is in the northern parts. So the Ukrainian forces have not captured any of the Russian-held villages. However, they've captured some significant heights here to the south of Berhivka, and they're also trying to advance by the E40 highway, and they've managed to push the Russians out of Orikhovo-Vasilivka. So the current situation is under development, and there is a lot of changes. Now, if we look through the updates from Remiland through this weekend, we see first off, he reports that the Ukrainian forces continue their attacks in the flanks, while Wagner will still try to conquer the city of Bakhmut, so that they have completed their part of the operation. So essentially, the Wagner group is trying to do their final job and then just pull back and get rotate out with the Russian forces. So essentially they have some sort of deal. I expect that as soon as they capture Bakhmut, then they will have time to recover, recuperate, and get relocated to somewhere else, while the Russian forces will take over this part of the front line. Then we have this picture here. This is a map uploaded by Yaron Shooter, and this is a geographic area map. And if we see here, the topographic area here by Khomove shows that the road here to the northwest, where all of the trenches were located, is the highest point. Then the trenches here to the north of that, which the Ukrainians managed to recapture, were at an elevation of about 160 meters. And then going further north, it decreases all the way to 110 meters. So the Russians have completely withdrawn from these heights to the northwest of Romove, which means that the Ukrainians now have a proper defensive line by this road. So they've fully recaptured the supply line going through Romove. Then we have this video here where we see a Ukrainian or Russian soldier, I'm not sure where the source comes from, but they are in a high-rise building within Bakhmut in the citadel area. And then we see a lot of white phosphor bombs or thermite bombs being thrown into this citadel area. So there's night after night with these very heavily with this very hot bombs being dropped within the citadel area to destroy the Ukrainian forces within the area. Then we have the latest updates by Prigozhin saying that the Wagner forces are able to completely hold back and stop the advances of the Ukrainian forces on the flanks, and that last night the Ukrainian forces took no action to advance further. Remy then goes on to report that there's no offensive by armed forces of Ukraine in the Soledar area, so this Vasyukivka, Sakoy-Vantsety area. Everything they whisper to you does not correspond to the operational tactical situation in the military conglomerate Bakhmut. So essentially there's a lot of information warfare going through, trying to confuse both sides, saying fighting is happening where fighting isn't happening and nothing is happening where fighting is actually happening. Then he goes on to say UA continues to attempt attacks around and northwest of Perhovka Reservoir area, so here to the northwest of this area. And Wagner forces are stationed here by the Vasilivka area, trying to hold these highlands to the south of the village and to prevent the Ukrainian advances. It seems that they have established defensive lines by the forest lines, so they're most likely trying to use those areas to hold back the Ukrainian forces, but at the same time we still see them being pushed back slightly. And then he mentions that the final stretch of land left for the Russian forces to capture in Bakhmut is not far. The Ukrainians have approximately 1.78 square kilometers left in their control, which indicates that the Russian forces continue to push, especially in the northwestern area, and they attempt to take full control over the city before Ukrainian forces manage to gain significant ground by capturing some significant villages like Yahitne and Berhivka in the north of the city or Klishivka in the south. Finally, there is some news that 2 helicopters, 2 planes, 2 Mi-8 helicopters and a Su-34 fighter jet and a Su-35 bomber have all been shot down in the Bryansk region, which is this region right here. According to some information, it is Russian air defense doing friendly fire, but I do not believe in that. And according to this Wagner source, with some undercover sources on the ground, they claim within probability of 95% the ambush was carried out with NASAMS air defense systems, whose crew knew exact corridor along which the Russian Aviation group was supposed to fly. Local residents saw 6 simultaneous launches in the north of the Chernihiv region. So essentially, Ukrainians set up some NASAMS air defense systems in the north of the Chernihiv region and shot down 2 helicopters and 2 planes in the Bryansk region. So the Russian forces most likely were caught off guard, not expecting the Ukrainians to set up air defense systems so close to the border. And as such, the Ukrainians received much success with this surprise attack, shooting down 2 planes and 2 helicopters in the Bryansk region. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to check out my Patreon. So if you want to support me, thank you very much for watching and have a great day.